Hello there, my name's Michelle Christie. I'm the Program Manager for Vocational Education and Training. You've joined us today because you're enrolled in an education course at Open Colleges. You might be enrolled in a Certificate 3 in Early Childhood, perhaps a Cert 3 in Education Support, or a Diploma of Early Childhood. Today we're going to be looking at Part 2 of the Assessment Requirement tutorial and focusing on plagiarism. So let's have a look at what is plagiarism. Plagiarism refers to the use of another's work, words, or ideas without proper acknowledgement. And this definition comes from the student handbook. Plagiarism is intentional when somebody deliberately copies another's work and attempts to pass it off as their own. This means if you cut and paste someone else's work into your assessment submission without attributing the other author, then you put your name on that cover page, you will have plagiarized. According to the Oxford Dictionary, plagiarism is derived from the Latin word kidnap. So what does plagiarism mean? Plagiarism occurs when you don't acknowledge other authors' work without academic referencing. You cut and paste information from other people, such as websites, textbooks, and learner guides. You fail to use quotation marks for direct references. You cut and paste and then change a few words within a quote without acknowledging the author. You attribute the wrong source. For example, you may have cited ECEC when Wikipedia was actually used. Copying so many sources that the majority of your submission is somebody else's work. So if 60% of your submission is cut and paste from other sources, that's really somebody else's work. It's not your own. You ask another person to complete your assessment on your behalf, or you turn in somebody else's work. It could be another student or another source as your own. There's a great clip about plagiarism that you can review in your own time. Just use the link, or you can find it in the student lounge in open space. It's important to note that plagiarism is a very serious offence, and when detected, can result in serious disciplinary consequences. The student handbook includes information about the student code of conduct. You can use either the link below or have a look in the student lounge in open space. It's good to, I suppose, consider the different types of plagiarism. We have unintentional, intentional, accidental, major, and minor. And unintentional is when a student doesn't realise that they've actually plagiarised another's source. Intentional is when someone is deliberately copying and pasting others' work and trying to pass it off as their own. Accidental might be a situation where they have written words and not realised that it actually was very similar or exactly the same somewhere else. And then you've got minor and major. So minor might be one sentence has been plagiarised, perhaps, where major it might be 50% or more has actually been plagiarised. How can you avoid plagiarism? Write the answers in your own words. Research only reputable or trustworthy internet sources. So when it comes to reputable sources, have a look back at my previous tutorial about referencing. You're wanting government sites, Australian sites, avoiding forums or wikis or blogs. When you do attribute other sources, use direct or indirect quotes or paraphrase information. Add quotation marks for direct quotes. Very importantly, don't share your assessments with fellow students. Whilst you might have the best intention of just giving somebody some further insight, there are other students who potentially aren't as good intentioned as you, and they may just change your name to their name and submit their work or submit your work. There has been instances of this happening before, and both students will receive a letter to say that you've breached the academic code of conduct. So it's best, if you do have a study buddy, to share information in the learning process. Perhaps you could even do a brainstorm at the start of an assessment together, but that's where it should stop. You should never share a draft or a final assessment submission with anybody else in the course. And also, don't copy from other student notes. To further avoid plagiarism, write the answers in your own words. I went through earlier in my first tutorial about preparing, researching, and really reviewing what those assessment instructions are about. So you do need to write things in your own words. And then if you are going to use a quotation, go and refer to other reputable sources to attribute that back up your answer. Make sure that any sources that you do use have in-text citation and also a reference list. Being sure that you have used quotation marks for direct quotes. And even if you acknowledge the source of the content, the language of the passage can be considered plagiarism if there's no quotation marks to indicate the phrases it comes from. So at times we do have students who might cut and paste one sentence into a paragraph and then start typing their actual answer and then add some more quotes. But within this paragraph, there are no quotation marks, which can be a bit problematic. Now, when we look at the student handbook, it does say that when using quotes, make sure you use words that link them with your writing. Don't just insert a quote and provide no explanation or context to the previous sentence. So a quote needs to back up your answer. It's not just a bolt on to fill the word count. Here's an example of a student submission. So this particular student has tried to attempt to reference. In this case, they have cut and pasted the quote and they've only changed the words in black. So this is called patchwork paraphrasing. So the red is still directly from the source, and this would come up in a plagiarism checker. So it's best to either just use the direct quote and use the entire sentence as it was intended, or you need to rewrite that sentence into your own words, not taking away from the content or context in any way. Also, if this was the direct quote, there are no quotation marks around this information. So it's hard to read at times what is your information, what's your answer, and what's the quote. So we need to make sure that the quote has quotation marks around that text. Here's another example. So we have Nell, 2005, explains, here's a quote about Dr. Seuss. Now, this is a direct cut and paste from the author, but because there are quotation marks around the information, this is acceptable in text citation. So this is not plagiarism, whereas the previous one is. Plagiarism is also considered to have happened when a student has the exact same response or similar response to another student's submission. And this is also called cheating. And as I said before, if you are in a situation where you have a buddy, don't ever share your marked or unmarked assessments with them. Keep them to yourself. So you're probably wondering what happens in a plagiarism process. So when a student does submit their assessment for the first time, the first thing that our assessors do is check the assessment. They scan it for plagiarism. If there is any likelihood that the student might have copied and pasted the information or has used ideas from a website, a book, or the learner guide without correct referencing, they will report the student to the faculty and we start an investigation. If the assessment is subject to an investigation process, it can take a week or more to get a result. If the student submission does go through a plagiarism investigation and it's cleared from the probability of plagiarism, then the assessment will be graded as per usual and marked to the student with a feedback form. If there is a plagiarism issue, then depending on whether it's your first time or you're a repeat offender, you might receive a misconduct letter, which includes the sources that have been used inappropriately. You would be advised to seek information or further training from open colleges about avoiding plagiarism and how to reference correctly. And you'd also be required to adhere to the instructions within the academic misconduct letter. If you do get a letter, the student will either respond to that and accept the penalty, or they would respond to the letter that they don't accept the penalty, in which case the student will appeal and the information will go to the complaints committee to review the student's case and ultimately determine an outcome. So what can you do to avoid plagiarism? Suggest to create a checklist for yourself before you submit your assessment. So make sure you have your personal details on the front page. Make sure that you've answered all questions or completed all tasks in your own words. If you are using quotes at all to supplement or support your answer, then in-text citation is required. A reference page needs to be added at the end of the assessment, which includes all the sources of information you've used or the in-text citations within your assessment. You can also check for plagiarism issues yourself, or also just make sure that any other attachments also don't include plagiarism. If you're still unsure, here's a great link that you will be able to use at writing.wisc.edu. How can you check for your own submission? You can copy and paste your responses into Google to search and see if any websites do come up. If they do and they're highlighted in bold, perhaps have a look at that submission or that website and investigate how much or what has been deemed as exactly the same. There are also websites or software you can use to check plagiarism, like SEO Tools is a great one, or QTex, PlagiScan, Duplicate Checker, and Dustball. We don't necessarily endorse any specific software. They're all a little bit different, so just maybe have a bit of a play with the different software and see which one works best for you. Now, this is very, very important. There is one website you must avoid. When it comes to putting your assessments together, I encourage you to try and complete assessments by not looking at internet sources first. This could cloud your judgment and change your answers or gut feel. So, as I said in tutorial 1, download the assessment, review the assessment instructions. Perhaps you want to write some notes down for yourself so that you get a feel for how you might answer the question first up. You're only going to start researching when it comes to supporting your answer with quotes after you've actually filled out or completed your own answers first. So there is a website called Aussie Childhood Network. It is a website where students can go to get information or share answers or get assistance when it comes to their assessments. We strongly encourage you not to go to this website. We all have, at Open Colleges, we have access to these forums. We know its content well. So if you do cut and paste from these forums, and put this into your assessment, you will get caught quite easily. The assessors are working on the same types of assessments every day. They know which ones have been plagiarized and which ones haven't. Ultimately, if you do use this website and you are caught, you're kind of delaying your own studies. Okay, because you're going to get a letter at some point saying potentially you have to do the assessment again, and you're going to have to do it all again in your own words anyway. So you may as well forget about this website, look at the assessment instructions, write things in your own words, and then start looking for quotes if you want to back up your answers. Now, I gave you a great tip. If you haven't seen that first tutorial, I went through a bit of a demonstration on how I put an assessment together using electronic sources. So please feel free to use that approach if that helps you, but please do not use Aussie Childhood Network. Now, you're probably wondering what will happen if I continue to plagiarize. Now, there are some possible serious consequences as a result of constant plagiarism. One, you could get a formal warning to you at the student in writing. It's possible to be issued with a fail grade to that assessment or that unit. You may have your enrolment suspended for a defined period of time, or you could even be cancelled out of the enrolment. So it's something to take note of. To avoid any breaches of academic misconduct or any letters or disciplinary actions, it's best just to do the assessments in your own words. If you do need some further assistance, we want to support you in your learning, so please ask for assistance. Our learning support team are a fabulous resource. This team can help you to understand referencing, and you can book an appointment with them at any time using the learning support weebly.com. Alternatively, if you would like some assistance from your trainer, please send them a message and they will be able to also assist you where needed. And I hope that has given you some more insight into plagiarism and how to avoid it. And if you haven't seen my first tutorial, I highly recommend it. Referencing is something that's very easy to do. It just takes a little bit of time to get used to it. But it's a bit like riding a bike. Once you've learnt and practiced for a few times, then it becomes easier. And if you do ever receive a letter about plagiarism, please get in contact with Open Colleges. We will be happy to support you to understand how to reference properly so that it doesn't ever happen again. Thank you for listening to my tutorial today. Thank you very much.